Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the 2024 M. Night Shyamalan film Trap. And today we're going to talk about subverting expectations, which is something that every dungeon master can learn from this film. There are spoilers for 2024 M. Night Shyamalan's film Trap here. All right. So this film is about a suburban father who takes his tween daughter to a Taylor Swift concert. Now, the person in the film playing the pop star is not Taylor Swift in name, but she is certainly Taylor Swift in every possible way but name, right? She just like it's very clear that this pop star is modeled after Taylor Swift, and this concert is modeled after attending a Taylor Swift concert. So, and I think that's a perfect structure, right? And that's something we can learn too as dungeon masters is when we come to our stories, if we use iconic templates from the IRL, we can save time and our dragon masters, our Dungeons and Dragons players understand what we're talking about more quickly and more comfortably, right? This film does an excellent job of setting up the expectations that you would get from that story that I just talked about and then completely subverting them. So the way that this is subverted in the film is that the father is a serial killer, right? And he leads two lives. So he leads a life where he is a loving father to his wife, a loving father to his children, son and daughter, and he is and then also in this second life that he is very careful to keep separate, right? He is a serial killer, and and what he does is he finds a victim, he abducts them, he then keeps them for a period of time in a room, and we don't really know what he does during that period of time, right? And then when he tires of the victim, he chops the victim into parts and literally just throws them into the street. And he is known colloquially as the Butcher. And he is active in the Philadelphia area, right? Now, this is actually really good. I have never seen a film present a serial killer in this way. In fact, it completely subverts the idea of a serial killer because most serial killers are not able. Yeah. So I read a great book on serial killers, and they said the biggest thing that causes a serial killer is entitlement. That they have to be outrageously entitled. It also said that they very rarely have engaged fathers, right? So there's kind of like, so they have this very strong relationship with their mother. Their father is gone, and then if a level of entitlement grows, that is the richest bed for a serial killer, right? Like to grow a serial killer. So quite fascinating, and this film goes into that, and it actually really explores how profilers catch serial killers, which is very fascinating film, really well done. But this serial killer is built different, right? Like every serial killer we see in movies is like super outlandish, super over the top, super weird, and it's given this idea that like people can tell, like that they're, an oddball, right? But this is completely different. He's highly socialized, able to, and really able to keep these two worlds separate, right? So I thought this was an excellent job of this movie. More than anything, can teach a dungeon master how to subvert expectations. And the reality is, we do have these expectations in IRL, right? Like we really kind of feel like Jeffrey Dahmer, Gacy, Ted Bundy, all pretty much the same person. Like they all share one attribute, all share another attribute. Yeah, and the list goes on and on and on. There's actually not a high range like for serial killers, and also strangely, especially in America, the vast majority of them are generally white males, right? It's part of it as well. So actually, M. Night Shyamalan runs full on into some of the stereotypes, right? So white male, right? The age is perfectly consistent, right? All of that. But the idea of loving suburban father is definitely a breaking of expectation. And this movie shows that like subverting expectation is, you need to do it with the balance, right? And so this movie really kind of moves the expectation around where it's needed, and I think there's something valuable to look at. The other thing is, I truly believe that M. Night Shyamalan's work is a strong platform for cohesive, actually makes sense narratives, right? Like a lot of films, you walk out of them and you're like, well, a bunch of these things didn't add up, right? That's not the case here. The movie is logically consistent, it's coherent, right? And so, but it also subverts expectations. And I think that's a very, very powerful formula. So, from a dungeon master's perspective, I highly recommend going to see this film. The one last thing I'll say is the name. So the name is really clever because it's trap, right? And the reality is, this concert for this Taylor Swift concert, is set up as a trap to catch this serial killer, right? And the law enforcement actually work with the stadium staff to catch this killer, right? Really fascinating. And they set this trap for him, and then 2/3 of the movie is him trying to escape this trap, right? And which is really an excellent, fascinating aspect. But one of the things I thought was really clever too was many suburban dads would think about taking their daughter to a Taylor Swift concert as a trap, right? They'd be like, I don't know any of these songs. There are a lot of screaming tweens here. Like, this is not my scene, right? So I thought that was clever that, that the name had two meanings. Now, what's interesting from a dungeon master's perspective is, and I have run into this, and I'm going to ask you a question now. I really struggle to name my campaigns. And the reason why is it's almost impossible to name a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, because one, you need a name when you start. And the reason why is you're like, hey, everybody, we're going to run this campaign. And if you don't have a name, that's a huge problem, because one, none of the players know how to organize it with their other campaigns that they played previously or that they're playing concurrently, right? So you need a distinct name. The problem is you don't know where the story's going. So any name that you set down is going to slide, right? So I thought this was really brilliant that M. Night Shyamalan was able to name this movie in a really clever way that had some wordplay in it, right? We don't have that ability to do that in Dungeons and Dragons as it currently stands, because we have to name the campaign when we start. And honestly, if you're not naming your campaigns when you start, you are a rookie and you really shouldn't be at the table, in my humble opinion. If you understand Gary Gygax's true name, you know things need a name, right? You have to give people a container to contain the narrative distinct from the other narratives they're in. And if you don't, your stuff is just, it's one, here you go. Why do you absolutely have to name your campaign, right? Well, have you ever, like, one of the worst players I ever played with named his character last? It is such and the reason why is he didn't care about the narrative of his character. He cared about the mechanics. He's like, oh, what's the DPS, right? It's the same thing. If you are not naming your campaigns, you are not a good dungeon master. You should step back. You should step back from the table as a dungeon master. Go join as a dragon master and learn from a dungeon master who knows how to do things. And one of that is naming campaigns immediately. So now we don't have this ability to do with what M. Night Shyamalan has done, right? But maybe there is a way. I don't know it. But fortunately, I have 3,000 people out there who are smarter than me. I would love to hear your thoughts on how to do the same thing. How to apply a name to a Dungeons & Dragons campaign at the start that doesn't seem meaningless 6 or 8 sessions in, right? And is there a way to transition a name? Is there a way to, because we don't do that. Like, we name at birth, and that's the true name until we die, right? But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So I really envy M. Night Shyamalan for his ability to cleverly name his film. I would love to learn how to cleverly name a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, especially when our narratives have such like when they transition so quickly and change. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion on M. Night Shyamalan's fantastic 2024 movie Trap. 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommended for all dungeon masters. And the important part is when I hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider like subscribing and have a fetch millennium.